Hello, everybody. Hope everyone's having a great night. Welcome to the Week Ahead News Show, episode 45, 45. With me and Tommy. Me, Liam, my good friend Tommy, on the Lead Doodle channel. It is currently Monday, January 12th, 2026, our second episode of the new year. Hope everyone's having a great Monday. We had some cold the past 2 days here in Ohio. Some people are tired, getting that sickness. Hope everyone's having a good day.
Episode 45, episode 45, we can't escape Donald Trump, 45th president. He looms over everything we do. So next episode, next week, it's gonna be a good episode. It's gonna be the 46th episode. And then the 47th episode just gonna be really, really I wouldn't even tune in for that one. I'd just check out, grab a white claw and don't even watch. But here we are today. Hopefully it will be a good episode. Um, but yes, here we are.
All right, let's get into it. Make sure to like if you're enjoying the content throughout the episode. It really helps us with that YouTube algorithm, helps us get us out there. Subscribe if you're not already. Ring that bell if you haven't. Notification, excuse me, below Tommy. That will notify you whenever we go live. If you want that, our Facebook is in the description. We also post daily whenever we go live on there. Are we going into the weather? Today we had 100%. So as yesterday, Sunday, we had 100% chance of snow. Today, it was partly cloudy, sunny, 36, low at 26. Tuesday, partly cloudy, high at 41, low at 28. Wednesday, about an 85% chance of sleet, 41 high, 29 low, a little higher that day too. But getting back to the cold. Thursday, getting a little bit colder, 29, 17 with about a 55% chance of rain and sleet. Friday, will be Friday. Friday, 45% chance of sleet, a high of 31, low of 14. Saturday, 50% chance of sleet, high of 31, low of 18. Sunday, going to be colder, 21, high 9, low, 40% chance of snow. Next Monday, 21, 10, going to be cold. This partly cloudy. And then all the next week, like Tuesday is 15, 6. Wednesday is 19, 3. So going to be cold next week. So get ready for that. Air quality's been good. The moon. Let's see where we're at with the moon real quick. I was like updating that. We're at 28% chance illumination right now. Sorry, 28% illumination. Next moonrise is at 3:33 a.m. Lucky number. Next full moon's in 20 days. We're at waxing crescent. Let's go into sunrise. Our first light today was at 7:16. Sunrise was at 7:47 a.m. Sunset was at 7:15. Last light 7:46. Or about 9 hours and 28 minutes of daylight. We're getting a little bit more here in February. Keep getting more into the spring, so exciting for that. Next expected precipitation, like I said, is about half an inch on Wednesday. Tommy will be going into the stocks for the last 5 days from last week. We also have daily stocks above us, which look like minor gains.
Yeah, some minor gains today, like you were saying, over the last 5 weeks, or excuse me, last 5 days. Same deal, minor gains. Dow was up 455 points, about 1%. S&P 500, 63 points, about 1%. Nasdaq, 300 points, a little over 1%, 1.28.
All right, so minor 1% gains, but if we get that consistently week after week, I'm happy with that. Helps out the 401k. I'm young, it could build up. So once again, if you enjoy the content, make sure you're dropping a like. We'll go right into a funny topic, which is about how Trump ended up reading a private note that was handed to him by Marco Rubio. I write in here like a dumbass because he kind of is dumb. Got handed a note and he just read it out loud, not really thinking that he shouldn't have been reading it. During a January 9th, 2026 White House meeting with oil and gas executives that was being televised live, probably C-SPAN. Secretary of State Marco Rubio slid a handwritten note to President Trump. The note was intended to quietly guide Trump's next comment, such as redirecting the discussion to Chevron. Instead of reading it privately, Trump said to the room, "Marco just gave me a note," and then read its contents. "Go back to Chevron. They want to discuss something," which is great. You should always talk about Chevron. Nothing ever happened bad there. Chevron, people like to say. Vice President J.D. Vance was seen laughing, Rubio visibly uncomfortable. It was funny, the faces he was making. And Trump continued to engage with a note, even asking Rubio to clarify what he meant, trying to take the blame off of him. Ultimately, Trump thanked Rubio publicly and moved on with the meeting. A viral video of the moment has circulated widely online, amplifying attention and commentary. There's been a lot of public and media reaction. Mainstream media outlets are focused on the awkward nature of the exchange, questioning whether it detracted from the sustainative policy discussion that was a stated purpose of the meeting. Media commentary highlighted a lighthearted and almost sitcom like quality of the president publicly broadcasting that's supposed to be a discreet cue. You can kind of see that in like an SNL skit, so that's kind of funny. What do you think, Tommy?
Listen, there's two parts to this story. The first part is the actual like passing of the note, and that just illustrates, that our president, has no social skills. He has, sort of no ability to, interact with others in a non sort of awkward way. Like, like someone hands me a note, I'm gonna be like, oh, thanks for handing me this private note. I'm gonna read it out loud. Like come on, like, clearly something's, not quite right there. So, that's the first part. The second part to this story is just the fact that the whole meeting with oil executives is based on a lie. And the lie is that Donald Trump's plan for Venezuela is going to work. It's not going to work simply because the math doesn't math. So Venezuelan crude oil is incredibly hard to refine. It's hard on infrastructure. A lot of the Venezuelan infrastructure is in decay, and quite simply, these oil companies that Marco Rubio was talking about, Chevron, Exxon, all these oil companies that the Trump administration is trying to get in, invested in Venezuela. Quite simply, their investment will not pan out with current oil prices, is what I've heard. So, um, no, it's just so my take on this is quite simply we have an awkward, socially inept president who held this meeting on this coercive plan for Venezuela that's not going to work because of the infrastructure and just simply that the price of oil is just too low. So no, it's just a farce.
Agreed. It's kind of funny, like you're saying, social cues, and also Trump doesn't really have like the intelligence, like intellectual capabilities to really understand how a conversation's going. Where Rubio has to direct him to be like, "Hey, we're trying to like talk about Chevron or like issues in the past." So definitely funny. But that's how Trump is. I'm ready to go on to national topic one. We got some longer topics tonight, so more deeper ones we'll go into, and Tom may be covering the first one. So excited to go into that, talk about that.
Yeah, yeah, so our first topic today is of course the murder in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, and the other ICE shootings that have been going around across the country. So um before the shooting, the Department of Homeland Security conducted large immigration enforcement operations in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, described as the largest in the region's history. More than 2,000 federal agents were deployed over several weeks. ICE presence on the streets. Federal officers, including ICE agents, were at a residential neighborhood near Portland Avenue in South Minneapolis. Neighbors and observers were present, including people watching or documenting ICE activity, which is their right to do so. Um, about 9:37 a.m., videos and witnesses accounts show ICE agents approach 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good, who was sitting in her Honda Pilot SUV on Portland Avenue. And an agent reportedly told her to get out of the car. There was some conflicting orders going on. Witnesses reported confusing at the scene. While one agent shouted for Good to exit the vehicles, others gave conflicting instructions. So then, of course, um, footage showed that Good's car turning away, very clearly turning away. That's a very important fact. People online are saying that Mrs. Good was angling her vehicle towards the officers, trying to endanger their lives. That would trying to take actions that would put any sort of officer at a reasonable fear for their life. But no, that's not the case. The fact remains that Renee Good was turning her car away from these officers. I don't care what people say online. I saw the footage with myself, and yeah, turning away. from
Yeah,
the
and real
ICE
quick,
agents.
Tommy, I'll say,
Um,
and like when the tire's not pointing at the guy, when he was to the left and the tire was pointed right, obviously he's not gonna drive into him. That's not how cars work. You know what I mean? Now,
right,
if she was power sliding, maybe, but that car was stationary. She wasn't driving before like going 30 and power sliding. Like it was a stationary
right.
car. When you point your tire right and you're going forward, you're gonna go right. But go on, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's so important. I'm glad you said that because, the car was stationary, and the video that I saw showed, Miss Good actually turning the wheel of her stationary car, before going, before pressing the accelerator. So certainly,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, that there's any intent to harm anybody here. You know, I think the facts support, um, the facts support the assertion that she was turning away from the officer. So. But of course, the ICE agent, um, um, was I struggle to use the right word because the facts are not quite clear. I wouldn't say hit. That would not be the correct word. Um, was pushed away, brushed by the car, and this guy's reaction was to shoot uncontrollably in a car that was driving away from the ICE agent. So yeah. So Good was extracted from her vehicle, given CPR, and then transported to a hospital. When she was later pronounced dead. Um, the victim was identified as Renee Good, a U.S. citizen, a mother of three. City leaders stated that she was not a target of ICE arrests had recently dropped off her youngest child at school before the encounter. So after after this tragedy in Minneapolis occurred, um, uh, of course the Trump administration did not, follow the rules, did not follow the days the procedures when it comes to investigating any sort of officer involved shooting, that was traditionally followed. Before this incident, before Donald Trump, for a second term, you know, anytime a federal agent would fire their weapon, there was a long, extensive administrative review process. Was this justified? Was this not justified? And you can say whatever you want about the police investigating the police, and quite frankly, I probably agree with you. you know, but at least there was an investigation. There used to be investigations. Now what we're seeing from the Trump administration is just you know this self defense narrative. We have Kirsten Nomi going on TV, JD Vance going on TV, Donald Trump going on TV, all of these Republican elected officials, in the executive branch and in the legislative branch, just saying, ICE did nothing wrong, ICE did nothing wrong, ICE did nothing wrong. So, quite simply, our elected leaders are foreclosing on any sort of um, independent, credible investigation. So, that was sort of the rhetoric following the shooting. So, um, after the shooting, of course, there were protests, and local leaders rejected the federal narrative as false. Saying that the agent, saying that you know Miss Good was not trying to run over the ICE, rejecting the assertion that she was a domestic terrorist of some kind. So, the FBI is leading the investigation, if you could call it that. And they have also cut out Minnesota State investigators, and were removed from the case and cut off. So yeah, so this is just well, let me go into this first. So this of course is not the only sort of ICE involved shooting. There's been many, many, many incidents. So just some key statistics for you. As of January 2026, Um, as of January 2026, total incidents since the crackdown began in July 2025. Again, this is probably an undercount as well. There have been 29 uh, documented incidents where federal agents either opened fire or held individuals at gunpoint. ICE agents, um, immigration agents have been linked to 16 separate shootings. These shootings have resulted in at least 4 deaths and 7 injured, and the geographic reach is just insane. The operations began, of course, in Los Angeles, spread to cities including Chicago, D.C., Memphis, Portland, New Orleans, and of course, um, Minneapolis. So we just I just went over the case of Mrs. Renee Good, who was, in my view, murdered by ICE agents on January 7th. But of course, there's been other cases. On October 4th, Mr. Martinez was attacked by ICE agents in Chicago. Um, Another case in Chicago I'm seeing here
A U.S.
in
citizen too. Yeah,
September.
crazy. Like that's like
Yeah,
May.
yeah. So yeah, I'm not going to go into too much details on these cases, but you know, there's certainly a pattern going on here of um ICE, using force against both U.S. and non-U.S. citizens alike. So listen, there's so much to this story. There's of course, the human tragedy of it all. That you know, um, Mrs. Good, a mother, a wife, will not be able to, you know, won't be around anymore. There's the human tragedy element of it all. But there's also the element of just, I would say, just a crazy amount of cruelty, cruelty and dehumanization that is going on right now when it comes to our immigration activities, as well as just flat out recklessness. That's don't forget that one, just flat out recklessness. I
Mm.
think what we're witnessing here, with the murder of Mrs. Good and with the all the other officer involved shootings that have been going on across this nation, is simply that we have an out of control federal agency that is they're cutting their training programs. There's no sort of um there's no sort of guardrails put on this agency. Certainly the administration doesn't want to put any guardrails on them. Pam Bondi doesn't. Donald Trump doesn't. JD Vance doesn't. So you have untrained people with no guardrails, who are then empowered to act unethically and deport people without due process of law. And also, they're also empowered to do so based on how people look, their race, etc., etc., etc. So I don't know quite what to say other than the rot in ICE runs very deep. We, before we were talking about this shooting, and we were talking about how ICE would would arrest people, and at least they're alive, but then they would put them put them in the back of a U-Haul and try to get them out of the state as quickly as possible in order to avoid the federal courts. What kind of agency that is truly um in line with the law would do that? Um what sort of agency would operate in this way without any sort of um, proper procedures and guardrails in place? What kind of agency would do that other than an out of control agency? One other key thing, and I'll end with this, is the shooting. The video I watched of this, um, was taken on the ICE officer's cell phone. And initially, I'm thinking, I was like, damn, so this guy's making content, okay? He's not doing his job. He's making content, and his content was murdering this woman. It's actually worse than that. The story is worse than that. That was true. My perception of that was true. He in one sense, he was making content, but he was also he was also recording because there was no body camera, and not only was there no body camera, there was no dash cam. They've been using dash cam since what, like 1990, the 90s. So think about it. Think about it. We got federal agents wearing masks with long guns, unmarked U-Hauls, rolling up into neighborhoods, killing people, and taking people without due process of law and rushing them out of the state. So, and there's no body cameras, there's no documentation, there's nothing to review. So, I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't look like justice to me. That doesn't look like uh, a well-regulated um, immigration agency to me. So, I don't
Agreed.
know. What do you have to say, Liam?
I'm sorry. You're crazy. Sorry about that. It's crazy. One of us at the end here, it says basically the surge in enforcement has conceded with the deadliest year for ICE in over 2 decades, which is crazy. 20 years. 32 people dying in ICE custody during 2025, which is crazy. I mean, there should be protests on this. It's kind of dumb that we're throwing a lot of money into this, and a lot of this is going to be lawsuits anyway. That's going to be more money the federal government's going to have to pay out. But we're literally killing people in custody and killing them, stuff like this, just while messing with them and them messing with us. We have to realize it's like with anything. I always say, when you police people, you're going to have incidents. And they're trying to police everyone right now. They're having incidents with American citizens, which is sad. People are attacking this lady a lot, Renee, and it's sad because these people might be religious, but they love to say, treat someone like how you like to treat yourself. And like if you're in that situation, a lot of people on the right, don't like the police. They feel like Ruby Ridge and Waco is justified. So what are you gonna do in that situation, buddy? Probably the same. So it's sad, if it was their mom, if it was their wife, or if it was their sister, they just don't care. They're kind of brainwashed and the sheep just to believe whatever people push for them. We saw a lot, and we talked about this, the Charlie Kirk people about life and death and how death is sad for everyone and people shouldn't die for beliefs. Well, I kind of feel the same, like, if the feds are, like, messing with you, like, I don't know, you shouldn't die for that either. We shouldn't really have the feds messing with us like they are right now. There's a lot of people mad about it, so good. Happily so. Hopefully this changes and people realize that we can't really have this again. We've learned about this in the history before, too, with people like in Eisenhower era. They try to do immigration raids a lot and deport people a lot and do a lot of incidents, so it's sad to me that this keeps happening and that people die from it. Like I said before, like I personally don't think she was going to hit him. If your tire's pointing to the right and the dude's to the left, based on her position, not his position, you're not going to hit the dude. In his position, he's to the right and the tire's pointing to the left. You're not, like, it's dumb to me. And it's sad. A lot of these ICE agents aren't properly trained. There was something how, like, this investigation proved a lot of them can't read or write, which is just sad. They're people that are uneducated and we're giving them guns to police us. It's just crazy. It's 1984. It's authoritarian of a max, and a lot of people that say they care about authoritarianism when it's like equal health care for everyone and free health care. You know what I mean? It's just dumb. You know what I mean? When it's actually like federal police in your state is messing with you. So.
No, it's crazy, and you know, it's just disgusting. It's just disgusting, and and it's just so sad. It's just so incredibly sad. And Donald Trump and JD Vance and Pam Bondi, they'll go out there and they'll call Mrs. Good, a domestic terrorist. They will call her all these things,
Which is crazy to
and
call an American citizen that, in my opinion, Tommy. Ain't that
right.
sad?
Uh,
Like, this any day,
Yeah,
if you mess up and ICE kills you, you'll be called a domestic terrorist. But go on, sorry.
right. And I'm not an attorney. This is not legal, but in my view, Renee Good, it was allowed to, record officers. She was certainly allowed to record officers and do all of those things.
For her
ICE
words,
doesn't
yeah.
like that, okay? ICE doesn't like that, but quite frankly, the Constitution doesn't give a shit what ICE likes. Like, you know what I mean? If the First Amendment gives someone a right to record law enforcement officers, you know, I don't give a shit what the law enforcement officer has to say about it, and quite frankly,
Yeah.
they need to be enforcing the right to, law enforcement officers in that case need to be enforcing the right of other people to actually record them, you know? So the point is, being in law enforcement, you 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 have to understand that you're gonna be dealing with, a general public, who is recording you, and stuff like that, and doing things that you're not gonna like, and to be very clear, in this case, you know, Mrs. Good, I think, was doing a good thing, by trying to hold public, by holding ICE accountable, you know, um, but we need people in law enforcement, who will have the cognitive ability to realize that, hey, this person in front of me, protesting me, I may not like that, but they have a right to do so. And I worry what we're seeing right now here with ICE agent is a bunch of insecure man children who fundamentally are incapable of understanding that. So it's scary time. It's a very scary time. I think we have a lot of bad people in ICE, the agents themselves, but also, certainly bad people running the agency as well.
Agreed. It's
And
sad, when you have someone as dumb as Kristi Noem as the head of it, you know what Trump's trying to do, and it's not trying to be efficient. It's not trying to actually do the job well. He's not trying to enact policy to get people. It's sad.
and I'll just say this very quickly, I don't consider myself to be a radical on the issue of immigration. I really don't. What I'm in favor of is I'm in favor of, a robust immigration system, that is able to um properly hear people's um, claims for asylum. That's able to hear those cases and actually make a decision that's based on um, human rights and just fundamental um, fundamental justice. Um, I want a system that can actually um, cater to the needs of immigrants. Somebody should be able to, flee violence in Latin America and come to the United States and be able to go to the United States and be able to say, I am freeing gang violence, I'm freeing a repressive government, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But then the United States needs to have the capacity to hear that case, know who this person is, assess the validity of their case, and then make a decision based on not based on, we're going to let the white immigrants in and not the brown immigrants. Not a decision based on that, but a decision based on justice, like I said. That's what I believe in, and in terms of immigration enforcement, you know, I believe in a pathway to citizenship. I believe in a and I believe in, getting rid of the people that have actually committed crimes here. And we also need to accompany that with robust worker protection laws for the people in this country who do not have citizenship, who are on the process, who would be starting the process of obtaining it. We need worker protection law to make sure that they're not exploited. So
Agreed.
I'm not a person who, is naturally inclined to go out there and say, you know, you know, abolish federal agencies, you know, but the rot is so disgusting, and it's got to be taken care of, and we have to replace this with an immigration regime that is actually that balances the interests of and um security and just our obligation to be just to one another. So
I agree, and we see a lot in past, and we talked about before. A lot of art. I forget what's called. It starts with an A, but whenever you come over here and say, you're seeking um,
Asylum.
asylum, is
Yeah.
based on what we didn't do in World War II. So a lot of times we need to do the right thing and keep doing it, and we're not doing that right now. So that's sad. I'm ready to go on
It's
to. Oh, you can go.
no, it's just crazy. People come up to the border right now and they're like, they're like, they're trying to do it legally. And they're like, they want to say, I want to declare asylum. And the immigration person says, okay, here's your court dates in 4 years. Like, huh?
Come back.
Okay, I'm going to
Come
hop
back
the
later.
fence.
Get your money. Get
You
your
know,
money
like,
back. Yeah, like they don't have money. It's crazy. It's so
like,
yeah,
this
so
is a
deaf.
part of the story that's not getting talked about is that in many many cases there is not an option to legally immigrate to the United States, and that's probably the plan. Okay,
Yeah,
you know that's probably
they want to make it
Stephen
hard.
Miller's probably like super excited right now. He's like, oh my god, my plan, it's working. But that it very well may be the plan. The broken system may be the plan. So
Yeah.
it shouldn't be. Anyway, I'm ready to move on
We'll go into
when you
national
are.
topic two real quick. It's about Senate contenders, comment on issues, count on Valley vote, overview of the 2026 Senate race, the candidates Republican U.S. Senator John Husted and former Democrat U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown. Political context: Husted was appointed to the Senate in January 2025 by Governor Mike DeWine to replace J.D. Vance, who resigned to become vice president. Election stakes for November election is for a remainder of a current term, with a full 6-year term up for election in 2026. Um, Foreign and policy and national security. Venezuela, the situation. President Trump authorized to capture President Nicolas Maduro on narco-terrorism charges. Trump suggests that the U.S. may run country for years and use its oil for reconstruction and to make some of their own money. Husted's views. One second. Sorry about that quick cough. Supports the removal of Maduro to restore stability and prevent financial collapse. He favors helping Venezuela to sell oil at market rates to benefit its people without using U.S. ground troops. Brown's view opposes the U.S. interventions, comparing it to the Iraq War, which he claims cost lives and money. With no positive outcome, he argues the U.S. government should focus on domestic issues like healthcare and prices instead of running another country, which I do like to agree with that. Now, a quick one is Greenland, another dumb one Trump's trying to do. President Trump expressed interest in purchasing Greenland from Denmark. They don't want it, though. They don't want to do that for national security reasons. They've already declined to sell. Husted's views is believed a larger U.S. presence in Greenland is strategic due to its Russian and Chinese aggression in the Arctic, provided it is handled through diplomatic channels. Brown's view argues the U.S. has no business in Greenland and should spend that money on domestic needs like from Mahoning Valley, which would be nice in other areas in America. So I agree with that too. That'd be cool to see. And like with technology now, and we already have a large military presence everywhere. That's kind of just dumb. Economic policy and trade. Some tariffs and trade agreements. Agreement on trade. Both candidates agreed if past trade deals have harmed manufacturing in Mahoning Valley. Husted stance supports Trump's America First policy and uses tariffs as leverage to force companies to manufacture domestically and rebuild supply chains. Brown's stance advocates for narrow, reliable, short-term tariffs on specific goods like steel. He criticizes Trump's border tariffs policies as reckless and unpredictable, claiming they cause inflation and harm exports and farmers. And it's kind of interesting to me seeing actually someone that like builds stuff. Like um, Biden's view on Build Back Better and putting money into infrastructure and having a lot of that having to be American made, that can be American made. It's kind of like the same thing as this American First to make people, saying force companies to produce and manufacture domestically. Except here, they're just saying it's a money thing. You know what I mean? Oh, you're gonna have to spend, basically no matter what, you're saving money anyway. But like, let's say you save 10%, making it in America now, where before it was just you get 40% of a project paid for free because it's made in America. And there's certain things on both ends that will never be made in America. And they both need their stipulations, but it's kind of funny how they both try to do their own thing. But in reality, like Trump says, like, "Oh, I'm gonna force these companies to do it," and Biden's just like, "I'm just gonna use it as leverage," or like, "Oh, you could do it, and you're gonna save some money actually." So it really all depends, and that's kind of interesting to me. The battle for Mahoning Valley, voter demographics. Once Democratic strongholds, Mahoning and Trumbull counties have trended Republican since 2016. Brown lost both counties in his 2024 race. Candidate Connections, Houston, claims to have focused on jobs and infrastructure. And his endorsement by the International Union of Operating Engineers Local 66 makes him the best fit for the Valley's values. Brown cites his 18-year history of visiting the valleys monthly and record of fighting special interest and rig systems as reason why voters will return to him, which is cool to see. Personally, I like Brown, and I think you could even compare these guys and their net worths, and even Brown, being in politics for a long time, has done way better. Um, so it's interesting in a lot of these union operations. Sometimes it just depends on who you know, and some of these unions are more Republican than Democrat nowadays. You're seeing of Trump's, all the unions that support him. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Hopefully, I want Brown to win, and we can get some more Democrats in the area. And hopefully, like, how bad the economy has been, and all this stuff with ICE, and just how bad Trump's been with Epstein, and just stuff after stuff after stuff. People are just gonna be tired of it again, and we get a blue wave coming up. What do you think, Tommy?
This news article just serves as your weekly reminder that um John Houston is a fraud. He talks a lot about standing up for working families in Ohio, but in reality, all only people he serves is the rich billionaires, and certainly the people on the board of First Energy down here in Akron. So listen, I thought this was a good article from the Tribune that they posted after the new year. Um, yeah, and the choice between Senator Brown and Senator Houston, it's so clear. It's so clear. Let's go down the line here briefly. Venezuela. You know, Houston, supports the removal of Maduro to restore stability and prevent financial collapse. He favors helping Venezuelans sell oil at market rates to benefit its people. So I just explained previously how that's a lie. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, they're not going to be able to sell their oil at market. So he's lying right there. You know, Brown's view opposes U.S. intervention at parents the Iraq War, which certainly has the potential to be true. Um, um, yeah, Greenland. Um, um, Hu- Houston's view. Believes a longer U.S. presence in Greenland is strategic. Believes a larger U.S. presence in Greenland is strategic due to Russian and Chinese aggression in Arctic, provided it's handled through diplomatic channels. Okay, that is true. Okay, but he fails to say that Donald Trump, his dear leader, is is actively um is actively um destroying those diplomatic channels. So he's saying we need to have more presence in Greenland through diplomatic channels, but meanwhile, your best friend, the president of the United States, is saying we're gonna take your territory by force. Here's the cold hard facts with Greenland, which is that there's a 1951 treaty that allows the United States to station troops in Greenland. At the height of the Cold War, we had 10,000 troops there. Right now, we have 150 troops there to 200 troops. Okay, so we can achieve our strategic interest in the Arctic while not being an asshole, and not actually um not actually degrading one of our NATO allies, which in Denmark, because Denmark administers Greenland. Um, Sherrod's view is also correct. He argues that we have no business in Greenland, and we should spend that money on domestic needs in the Mahoning Valley. This is also true. Two things can be true. We need to secure um access to future shipping lanes and stuff in the Arctic, but certainly we need to be investing here in the Mahoning Valley. But one thing that's for sure, Houston is just following his dear leader when it comes to Greenland. Houston knows that this treaty exists, and he sees Donald Trump out there just ignoring that and just just insulting the Greenlanders, and then he has the balls to lie to the readers and to the voters of Mahoning County by saying it's got to be handled through diplomatic channels. Well, maybe you should talk to your guy then, John. Okay. Tariffs.
Agreed.
This is easy. You know, tariffs are a tax paid for by the consumer. Houston, um, supports these tariffs, which are costing Ohio working families. Brown does not support these large carte blanche tariffs. So, listen, it's very clear case here. Do you want a guy who advocates for working families, or do you want a guy who advocates for the drug companies, for the oil companies, for the energy companies, all of those? So I think that article that was printed in the Tribune, I think it illustrates that. Do you have anything else to add on that?
Nope, that's it for me. If you're ready to go into our international topic for the day, excited to have an international one this week.
Yeah, this should be brief. So right now, we're in a situation right now where the government in Iran could fall imminently. um, right now there's massive protests going on in Iran due to economic conditions, which is an important fact that I'll explain. Um, and there's also um, threats of force being uh, threatened against them. So right now, Iranians are hitting the street. At the heart of the unrest is Iran's currency, the rial, has plummeted dramatically in value, causing skyrocketing inflation and making everyday goods unaffordable for many. For food prices, for staples like meat and rice have surged significantly over the past year. In December 2025, the government introduced a new pricing tier um, for subsidized fuel, for subsidized petrol, raising costs of fuel that have been some of the world's cheapest, triggering broader public anger. Um, what began as economic protests, including strikes by merchants in Tehran's historic Grand Bazaar, quickly evolved into a broader anti-government demonstrations. Protesters now chant "Death to Khamenei," and accuses the clerical leadership of corruption and mismanagement. So, what we have here now going on in Iran is a protest not based on things that are divisive in their society. So we go back into the 2020, I think it was 2023, when they were protesting against their quote unquote morality police. Eyes rolling out of my head. Um, they were protesting that. But when you're living in a fundamentalist society, there's going to be a certain amount of people that are for the morality police, and there's going to be a certain amount of people that are against the morality police. It's economics. When the currency is up, when there's massive inflation, going on in Iran, when there's people can't buy groceries, when they can't buy food,
Inflation
it's
and
a lot easier
corruption,
to
yeah.
build it's a lot easier to build a protest movement based on that. So on January 8th, the Iranian government imposed a nationwide internet and phone blackout in an effort to disrupt protest conditions and limit the flow of information. The blackout is one of the most severe communication shutdown in Iranian history, and has made independent verification of events difficult. This is authoritarian leader 101. Turn off the internet. Um, Security forces, including the Revolutionary Guard Corps, have been using live ammunition, tear gas, and force against demonstrators. Massacres and killings have been reported, which is critical because Donald Trump said that threatened U.S. intervention if the protesters were harmed, and there's been a lot of protesters harmed. Um, Iran's top judiciary and supreme leader vowed to crack down firmly on protesters, warning of punishment with no leniency. Um, the it's hard to confirm the death toll, but there's probably about hundreds Uh, human rights organizations place the death count at hundreds, potentially thousands, um, with some estimates citing around 2,000 casualties as the most extreme, though independent verification is limited. Um, and additionally, around 10,000 people have been arrested. From economic to politics, initially demonstrators focused on economic hardships, but the movement now embraced broader opposition to the Islamic Republic's political system, calling for fundamental reforms or leadership change. Some chants and activism reflects support for Reza Pahlavi, the exiled heir to the former monarchy, though calls for democratic reform, though others call for democratic reform or systemic change. Iranian officials accused foreign powers, especially the United States and Israel, of exploiting unrest and stirring foreign-backed dissent. The state media framed the protesters as saboteurs and emphasized the need to defend national order. Global leaders and rights groups have condemned the violence and restrictions on communications. U.S. leaders have voiced support for protesters, while other nations call for restraint and respect for human rights. So, this is a complicated story, but let me just say this then. I'll just say this. So, the world would be a better place without the current government in Tehran. Okay. That's just very, very, very clear. To me, we have a government in Tehran that is um they're 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 at odds with the national security interests of the United States. They're at odds with the interest of their own people, quite frankly. They impose upon them draconian religious laws. They do all sorts of things that hurt um, both the Iranian people and the legitimate national security interests of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So the best case scenario for this is that the people actually do overthrow the Iranian government. Okay. It's now I'm not a big fan of, the US, getting involved in this, or Israel getting involved in this. I would really like this to be just completely, you know, um homegrown as much as possible. Certainly don't want any, US boots on the grounds, or any intervention. But if the Iranian people are able to um, overthrow their government and establish something that is legitimate, that does not threaten global security, there would be a great potential for Iran, and there would be great potential for a broader peace, not peace in the Middle East. I'm not going to say that, but a broader the Middle East would definitely be more peaceful without the current government in Tehran. Um, so I guess all's good luck to the protesters. I hope you're successfully able to overthrow your government, and I think this could be a win-win for everybody besides the religious zealots in Tehran. And also, this would be great for another fact, that it would be a bloodless way of resolving the conundrum of Iran cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons. Full stop. Full stop. Period. End of discussion. But also, I don't want to bomb their nuclear sites either.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be a good way where the religious zealots fall. Iran is brought out of the axis of evil, and they're brought into the legitimate community of nations, and are able to trade and barter, and sell their goods, and they won't be funding terrorists, and and hopefully and some Iranian people will see some benefit of that. So just keep an eye on this. Who knows? Who knows? There's also a great possibility of U.S. or Israeli involvement coming forward. The Americans or the Israelis very well may try to, you know, put it like this. They're weak right now. So if Benjamin Netanyahu thinks that they could collapse the government, it's only going to take one airstrike, then make it easier for the protesters. That's definitely a possibility.
Yeah.
Um, there's also a grave chance that things spiral out of control. Like I just said, the best case scenario. They could overthrow the government and a civil war breaks out. Who knows? Or nothing happens. But keep an eye on this. Certainly great potential. I'm watching this with some great interest. So, what do you have to say, Liam?
Yeah, it's something like you said before. Like it happens a lot because they've had so many regime changes and then so many theocracies. That's the word, right? For religious ran governments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Since the '90s, probably even earlier than that. But probably with our involvement a couple times, it's just it's sad that time and time again, they're having these huge inflation issues of corruption as well. So that that's going to cause people wanting to go out in the streets and protest.
Yeah.
Hopefully, like you're saying, I agree too. Hopefully, it works out for them. It's crazy how many are getting arrested and how many are getting killed. Sorry. A government's reaction to shut down internet, to stop communications, because they've seen what happened in other countries with using like Discord and just a bunch of other apps online and whatnot, whatever, to communicate throughout these processes. So sad to see, their rights getting taken away and government cracking down on them. But like you're saying, hopefully some good could happen from it.
Yeah. Hopefully some good comes out of it because there's great potential in Iran, and we did them dirty, in the 1979 Islamic Revolution. We were supporting the Shah of Iran, and we and the British had a bunch of deals over their oil, and then the people got mad. That created an opportunity for basically terrorists to come in. We were trying to take their oil, and then and they were like, we're gonna not let you do this, but also we're gonna put in a fundamentalist Islamic government. So, it's we've done them dirty in the past for sure, but hopefully something good comes out. We'll see.
And why do we put in a
Anyway,
fundamentalist? Because we know that's not good for them. But like, did we just do that because that's who was going to agree with us on the best deals for oil?
no, they didn't put in. They put we were supporting a guy called the Shah in 1979, and he was a monarch,
Mm,
and he made a deal with us and the British, for part of their state-run oil company. Okay, and
I
and
see.
so we didn't put this government in there. What happened was we just pissed off the people, and the Ayatollah at the time, was able to use that anger as an opportunity to turn Iran into a fundamentalist, religious, terrorist supporting country.
Oh wow. Okay.
And ever since then, it's just been downhill from there.
Yeah. Thank you.
But it
Makes sense.
actually did originate with our involvement with their government and trying to take their oil. That is true.
Yeah.
In the 60s and 70s and stuff.
So it's been a while. Yeah, been a long time. And we'll go into a local topic one, another quick one. Hope you guys have been enjoying the content. Make sure you drop a like if so. We've been live for a little bit over an hour. Quick one about Forlorn Sci-Fi Museum. They got a grant and they got the final delivery of their product. So interesting to see. Excited for that. January 2026, the Museum of Science Fiction and Fantasy Arts took a giant step forward with a $2.3 million grant from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. Let's go, ODNR. Thank you. This award comes via a state's abandoned mine like lands economic revitalization program, which aims to stimulate economic and environmental growth in historic coal mining regions. And this museum project is one of 6 local initiatives selected for funding. The grant is the second largest among the 6 winners, and it reflects strong state confidence in the museum's potential, according to Megan Reed, executive director of the Trumbull County Historical Society. They're also, I guess, trying to get a bunch of input for the 250th, anniversary of America. So if you guys have any old input about Trumbull County or old family, you could send them stuff on the Trumbull County Historical Society website. The organization that is leading the effort, the project was ranked top 5 among roughly 70 applications. That's great. She said the award affirms the project's potential economic impact for the region, which would be cool. There's a lot of restaurants around there. It would be cool to see a museum. You could stop by, pay $5 or $10 and see some cool stuff. But $2.3 million will be allocated in two main phases. First, about $320,000 will fund the design work and environmental reviews, essential steps to ensure the building is ready for transformation. A lot of times that's like, what do you call that? Mold and asbestos, like removing that pretty much. The remainder of the rest of the $2 million is designated for the construction. Work on the museum began in 2023 after Warren native John Zorbucky, an acclaimed Hollywood prop director, donated more than 500 original sci-fi props created from his former company, Modern Props. These items featured iconic films and television series like Blade Runner, Ghostbusters, Men in Black, Batman, and Star Trek, so that's cool to see. Will be a cornerstone of the museum's exhibits. If you ever watch Pawn Stars, a lot of his stuff got sold on there. The museum's team has enlisted the help of Hickok Cole, a Washington, D.C. architectural firm known for its work on institutions such as the International Spy Museum, which I believe that's in D.C., ran by the CIA, and the National Geographic Pavilion. But even with the state funds secured, experts say opening even part of the museum hinges on additional funding from private donations this year. For the community of Warren and the broader Mahoning Valley organizers see this not as a museum, but as an economic engine, a destination that could affect and attract visitors, support local business, and stimulate cultural activity in the region. That's reimagining its identity with, like I said, the restaurants and Robin's Feeder in that area. Really cool to see. Planning will continue in this year, 2026, with architectural design and construction bids slated to move forward as the project unfolds. Expectations are high for what could become a unique cultural institution dedicated to science fiction, fantasy, storytelling in all its forms, kind of like you see at Point Pleasant in West Virginia with Mothman. They have a museum there. A lot of these weird places, Area 51. You can get some cool museums going. So I'm excited to see that. See what will help out for downtown Warren. What do you think, Tom?
I think I'm an old man at heart because, I have my morning routine. I wake up and I look at the newspaper and I read the newspaper every day. But I don't read everything in the newspaper. Only like certain things. And things I'm interested in, things I'm not interested in. And the science museum was in the category of I did not read this article when I saw it come in. So listen, this is just not my area. I'm very happy that that there's any sort of investment coming into the area, sort of grant money coming in. People will be able to um, go in to the museum and see all the exhibits, have a good time with their friends and family. Get to experience some Trumbull County. Get to experience Trumbull County. The county will be able to get that sales tax revenue coming in. And then they'll be leaving the county after. They all live in Mahoning. They're coming into Trumbull. So
They could get food though. Western Maine. There's a lot of
they're
good
not
food
voters
there.
here, so that's the perfect person to give a sales tax to. They don't vote here, so it's perfect.
True.
Um,
Go to Modern
so
Methods.
listen, so I'm happy for any sort of development in the community. It's just not something that I'm interested in.
Yeah, well, you might like it if we go as a trip one weekend, or you know what I mean. If it's even in the winter, it'd be fun. I'm excited for it. They have a laser beam. Um, oh man, why can't I think of that guy's name? Oh, that's gonna kill me. I know my dad likes him a lot. Something Gordon, and now that I said it, it's gonna kill me. It's not Space Gordon, but some old sci-fi. They have his laser beam. They have a teleportation from Star Trek. So I'm gonna go and see some stuff. They let you take photos. That'd be kind of cool. Um, that's actually gonna kill me, and I'm gonna look that up real quick. But like you're saying, it'll be good for economics, and there might be a lot of the nerds coming around. Um, oh, Flash Gordon. There we go. If I'm not mistaken. There we go. Yep, laser beam like Flash Gordon. So that'd be cool. I'm excited to see some stuff like that, and it's kind of interesting how we have people in this area that did so much stuff in movies back in the day. So I'm excited for that. But like that's something that I'll probably go once or twice and I'm good. But they might do different exhibits. Keep people interested. We have stuff like COSI in Youngstown, so sometimes these museums, they have like kids areas and they kind of keep the community interested in it. So that's kind of cool. Excited for that. Running a little bit long tonight, guys. Sorry with that VI story and other stories. I got pretty long tonight. A lot of stuff are happening, so we'll stay on it next week here for Week Ahead News Show. We'll be here at 8:30 like we always are. We'll be here with a Northeast Star Sports Show on Thursday, and we should have a Healthy Living Show coming back. Make sure you're following us on Facebook. We post all of our lives on there. Subscribe on here helps out as well. If you ring that bell, notifications. Make sure you drop a like if you enjoy the content so far. Really appreciate that. We'll have a Week Ahead News Show with me, Liam, my good friend Tommy. That's it for me. Hope everyone has a good night, Youngstown. We're almost there for a week.
Good night, everybody. Good night.